Okay. Recording's going. You have to click to give your consent to get in. Most of you are doing that. Any of you that needed to change your name would have changed it by now because we've talked about this several times. Okay. Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is going to mirror what we did in chapter 9 in our Java book. And what I mean by that is when we covered 2 sections in chapter 9. In Java, 9.2 talked about character methods. And then in 9.3, we took a look at a whole bunch of string methods that we hadn't talked about up to that point. Now, some of you went above and beyond, and you got into string tokenizing, and a bunch of that stuff was great. And I want to start to incorporate that back into my CPS 230 because I think it's good to cover. But the basics behind it were methods for characters and methods for strings. And we had a bunch of methods for characters, 2 upper, 2 lower, and so forth. Richie says back. What's that mean?
It means he's back. I guess he left for a second.
Oh, okay. All right, good. So we're going to start in chapter 10 and taking a look at what's going on. I'm thinking we should possibly get through, he says, yeah, possibly get through 3 sections. But in section 10.1, we're going to take a look at, and of course, we want to get rid of our terminology of methods, and we want to go back to the terminology of functions. So I start taking a look at a bunch of functions, and there's a table in section 10.1, and inside of it is a ton of these character functions. Now, do you remember back in Java, how did we use something from a character method? I do believe we had to do character dot. Does that sound familiar? We had to call the class dot and then what method we wanted to use, and then we were passing characters over. The big chunk of those methods, same here, a big chunk of those functions are ones that are going to have a return type of true or false. So if you look in table 10.1, you'll see, what page do you have for 10.1?
558.
Okay.
Yeah, 558.
Once again, my book has 548 because I have the wrong edition at home. But you'll see a bunch of them that are is alpha, is AL num, is it an alphabetical or numeric? Is it digit? Is it lower? Is it print? And so on. First thing, what's the return type for all of these?
True.
True or false, right? True or false. Second thing, we have one at the very bottom that says is space. And I usually get questions about is space because what it's checking for is it white space? So we're going to be having a character go in, and we're going to be returning a true or false, and it's going to be dependent on what a white space is. And just to make a note, it's listed there. We had this in Java as well, but it's listed there. It's a space, a vertical tab, a new line character, a tab character. So several things will fall into this group of testing to see if it's what we call white space.
One of the code listings had white space, right?
Yes. Yes. Okay. You did type in code listing 10.1, and it was just a bunch of examples, and we used the idea of a Boolean expression inside of an if statement, and all we did was we called is alpha, and then we had something following it, and it would return either true or false. Now, you notice in code listing 10.2, which is one I didn't have you type in, we are reading everything in. I'm looking at line 13, code listing 10.2. I'm looking at line number 13. Okay. And what do I have in line 13?
You have an array.
Array of Characters. So this leads into, okay, an array of characters. And we're going to talk about this in section 3, but this is old school how we used to work with strings. We didn't have the string class written for us. Same within Java. In C, we had to use things called character arrays. And we'll talk more about it in 3, but you see it come up right here in this code listing 10.2. We declare an array called customer of size 8. And we're going to read in a line, read in 8 characters, and we're going to store. So we're going to read in a line, but as we're reading it in, it actually stores it in a character array. Okay. Now, what's the big deal about the character array? Well, when I use the array name and a subscript, I'm going to have a character which is going to become an argument for these functions that we pass in. So an example of that is in 10.2. Like I said, I should have had you type it in, but I didn't. But line 13 is where we're talking about. And then we jump right down to line 19 with the cin.get line. And we're actually reading in the whole array, just similar to what it was like a string. Another thing to mention, do I have an import statement of relevance? You know, I always start out by talking, is there an import statement? Hashtag include. What are we including? Bueller?
C-type.
CC type. Thank you. And again, I don't know if any of you have skeletons or not. You know, this is another thing you could add at the beginning and just put in a note with it, whether it's going to be needed or not. Just like, you know, IO stream is in all of these. And so we have a couple of them going on. Continuing on with program 10.2, I'm looking at line 22 where it's actually testing customer, comma, size. Well, what is test num? Test num is a function that begins down on line 40, and it says, you know, hey, int count, we're going to go through this loop so that we can access each character of the array and check out to see if they are alphabetic or not. You notice the second for loop, I go through it again to check out if it's a digit or not. And in here, we're using a flag. Well, we're not actually calling it a flag, but it's like using a flag because we're doing a return of either true or false, depending on the conditions. Questions? We go with 10.1 and some of these character functions. And like I said, they all return values of either true or false. Taking a look at 10.2. This time we're doing some conversions. And what do I mean by conversions? Well, you'll remember a little bit of it from back in Java class. And the first two make it jump right out. 2 upper and 2 lower. So back in Java, we were using character dot 2 upper to convert it. Anything that was alphabetic to an uppercase. And then we had the 2 lower to convert anything that was upper to lower. What if I send in an asterisk? It would just ignore it, just like before. So you had program 10.3 was one you typed in, and this is a good spot where, and a lot of you were familiar with this concept already of putting in a run again option, but just, you know, grabbing that first character. So if they type in yes, you know, they could be typing in yeah, they could be typing in lowercase s, they could be typing in all uppers. What was the important thing was just the Y. And if we took it and used 2 upper or 2 lower, we'd only have to compare it to one thing. And you see that going on in section 10.3 to help us with the run again option. So we have other character functions that don't return Boolean but have other return types. Once again, the other thing in 10.3 was getting that IO manip include in there so that we can be formatting to 2 decimal places. You know, it's one of those, the more you see it, the more you think about it, and the easier it'll be to make your output look pretty. along with font colors and indenting and centering and all of those good things, right?
Right.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. The last section we're going to cover, and then I'm going to turn you loose on writing 2 different programs. And, I like the breakout room. So I'm going to be throwing you in pairs, groups of 3 or whatever. I'll get everybody assigned. But it's something called a C string. Now, a C string is not
I think we lost
Did
him.
his mic or something
Yeah.
give it?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I hit something on my mic or my thing and it mutes and unmutes. So on my headset, I leaned up against it, but I can just go this way like I've been. Okay, so in the old days, when we had C as a language before C++, because C++ was a whole bunch of improvements to C. But we had C, and like I said a little while ago, our strings didn't exist. And we had to use something called a C string. And what a C string is it's going to work just like we talked about a moment ago, but it's going to be this array of characters. Now, one of the things that goes on with a C string is it's an array and it's stored in consecutive locations. Now, if I start putting in hi, mom, I need to know somehow or other where this array ends, because it's not like an array we declared before when we would say, hey, we want an array of size 10 because we're going to store 10 integers. Now I have an array of characters, but I don't know how many I have. So what a C string does is it always says, hey, if you're going to store hi, mom, you better make sure your size is at least 7 in this case, because we need to keep track and put in that null character, that /0 on the end. Because otherwise, I have no way of telling when this C string is going to end. It could just keep going on and on and on. So when I want to work with this character array, which we're going to call C strings, and all of the functions that go with it, I need to make sure when I'm storing, I add at least one more so I can get that null 0 in so that it knows when it ends. So far, so good. Now, why are we bringing this up? Because there's a whole lot of code that's written in C that some of you may have to come across with the job and know how to deal with it, especially with that /0 on the end. What do we got? I had you type in code listing 10.5, and it looks like what we had done before. And one of the things in 10.5 is we set the size at 80. Now that's old school. 80 means something to me. Remember when I talked about punch cards in 121, which wasn't all of you, but it was a bunch of you. We talked about punch cards and how many characters, characters in a single line on a punch card. That used to be the width of our monitors. Our monitors used to be 80 characters in width, and it was either 24 or 26 in height. So, I mean, it was rows and columns and done. It wasn't a whole bunch of resizing and everything that we can do today, but our punch cards were size 80. So going across your screen, there was 80 characters you could put on. There was 26 rows. So imagine you could only ever see at 26 lines of your program at one time. You couldn't shrink it or enlarge it or anything. So when you see this in program 10.5, that's where the line 80 comes from. I'm sorry, what was that? I missed that comment. Characters in a single line, yes. Is default console window terminal window width size in a bash shell? Maybe. Does anybody have an answer for his question? I'm not sure what he's asking.
Yeah, I was just saying that it is.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
He's saying that it was.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. I'm going to try my headphones again so that I can hear a little better. Hear me? Can anybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so, good. I can hear you better with my headphones on. Okay. Did we answer Matt's question?
I was just kind of stating that it was that. I don't know if it is a window just for
Okay.
feedback.
Okay. Okay, I got you. So going back to 10.5, you see we have this whole get line thing, and we're going to be working with a whole lot of functions coming up that are going to say, you know, hey, is there a function like we've talked about before that I can use to work with these C strings? So what I've given you is just like a basic introduction. So now, I know you all prefer to type. I'm going to get ready and end the recording because I'm going to send you to 2 problems that I want you to work on. It seems like the lessons go a lot faster online than in the classroom. And I think it's because we lose a whole lot of interaction by doing it online. But I'm hoping when you folks have comments, you ask them. Okay, stopping the recording.